So next up, I am thrilled to introduce Silvia Stacchiotti, and comes to us from Italy, and will be providing an update on the European Society of Medical Oncology Conference, also known as ESMO. A sincere thank you to Dr. Stacchiotti for her dedication to EHE research and for making it a hot topic at the ESMO conference this past September. So please welcome Dr. Stacchiotti.
Thank you very much for organizing this conference and for inviting me to join. It is really my sincere pleasure to be here with you today and to see after how many years of collaboration that the EHE Foundation and the EHE family and community is growing and making incredible steps forward. This is good for a patient affected by EHE, but it is also very important, and I really like to underline this, for all other communities of patients affected by ultra-rare sarcomas. So we will spend some time in discussing about a workshop which was held in December 2020 on epithelioid hemangioendothelioma. These are my disclosure. I think we need to start by trying to clarify why we decided to organize a workshop on epithelioid hemangioendothelioma. What need was there to organize this kind of meeting, this kind of conference? As it was recalled before, epithelioid hemangioendothelioma is an ultra-rare sarcoma, and like in case of other ultra-rare sarcomas, patients and physicians and their physicians do face with several challenges that are not there in case of a common tumor type. This has to do with a limitation in the availability of epidemiological, preclinical, clinical data. These tumors are less attractive for the industry, especially when a drug, a potentially active drug, is already approved for another indication. For that reason, we have a few, especially industry-sponsored clinical studies. We have a few approved drugs available for our patient, and very often we need to use off-label drug. This translates into a higher degree of uncertainty when we have to take a clinical decision, and of course in often more inconsistencies in patient care all around the world. And of course, there are less funding to support research in this kind of disease. So among many other tools, guidelines and position papers are conceived to improve patient care and cure. And this is done trying to harmonize the approach to the disease throughout the world. In addition, this kind of meeting can help a lot in identifying which are the open questions, and on this basis try to direct the clinical and preclinical research. And of course, this is also very important. They are very important to support the discussion with the regulators, with those people who are in charge for the approval of new agents in a given disease. We had already two very good examples of ultra-rare sarcomas, chordoma and desmoid tumor, in which working together on a position paper on the clinical management of the disease help a lot in improving patient care. And for that reason, taking advantage from a conference which was supposed to be held in June 2020 by ESMO to update the ESMO guidelines on sarcomas, we decided to organize a workshop to discuss with a community of experts about epithelioid hemangioendothelioma. This meeting should have been done the day before, but unfortunately, coronavirus almost a year ago entered our lives. For that reason, we couldn't have a live meeting for the ESMO guideline, but we decided not to give up, not to cancel the meeting, and to try to have done virtually. And in fact, on the 4th of December 2020, we had our consensus conference, which I think was a good experience, even though, of course, we were a bit scared about running a discussion in such a format. The meeting was supported by the European Society of Medical Oncology and also by the Epithelioid Hemangiendothelioma Foundation, which I would really like to thank for that. In particular, I have to thank you, Leonard, the UK liaison, and also the US group for helping us in organizing this meeting. The proof that the meeting was done is here. You can see the faces of many experts meeting together. And I want to underline that we had a great representative participating to the meeting with more than 80 experts together with patient representative from more than 20 different countries, from Europe, from North America, from Asia. And we had the participation also of a network of experts like Huracan, Genturis, and PEDCAN. Also, the pediatrician joined the meeting. We try to have the most of the specialties involved in EHE patient care attending the meeting. We had epidemiologists, pathologists, radiologists, surgical oncologists, and I'm very happy to say that also HPB surgeons who usually are not very much involved in the sarcoma activities join the meeting and were very collaborative. Then we have the radiation oncologist, medical oncologist, the pediatrician, palliative care, basic scientists, and as said, patient advocates. As said before, the aim of the consensus meeting was to try to reach a consensus on the clinical approach to EHE. Of course, also underlying all those points in which there is no consensus, which is something not that uncommon in ultra-rare diseases, to have a tool to harmonize the approach to EHE and also to highlight all the open questions to be addressed from now on. Which methodology did we use? So first, we started with the literature review and a new data collection. In the next few weeks, you will see two new papers published. One is an international retrospective study on the activity of cytotoxic chemotherapy and pazopanib in a patient with advanced disease. This is the results of a collaboration which went on in 2019 and early 2020. And then another paper on clinical prognostic factors in addition to pleural effusion, also the presence of fever, of pain. So all this was material which was prepared as a backbone for the discussion. Then we worked together on a pre-meeting draft. We prepare with a subgroup of people of each disciplines involved in the meeting. The pre-meeting draft was circulated and a first round of comment was done. Then we had the meeting on the 4th of December with plenty of discussion. And this is now followed by the attempt to incorporate in a second draft all the comments which were raised. We are circulating again the new text, and the final version will be provided to all those who participated in the meeting, included patient representative. It is important to notice that all the statements will go together with the definition of the level of evidence and grade of a recommendation. And we have planned to submit the paper hopefully before June 2020. The level of evidence and grade recommendation will follow the scale used for the ESMO guidelines for soft tissue and bone sarcoma. In this way, we try to define on which evidence literature available is based on every clinical recommendation, and which is the level of agreement or disagreement among the experts. The contents are of course still matter of discussion, so we cannot share the text today, but we try to address epidemiology and prognostic factor, pathology and molecular biology, radiology, including how to assess a response in epithelioid hemangioendothelioma. This is a critical point, since, for example, you know that a progression, an increase of a pleural effusion or serosal effusion is not considered a progression by RECIST, which is the response criteria, which are the response criteria commonly used in clinical studies. Then we address the treatment, starting from biopsy, surgery, general principle, and how to approach the disease according to the anatomic location, then radiotherapy. Then we had an interesting discussion on local regional treatment in alternative to surgery and radiation therapy. Then, of course, systemic treatment, palliation, and pain treatment, which is to be incorporated from the very beginning in the clinical management and the future perspective. The most critical points which were discussed together were, first of all, a semantic definition of the three main presentation of the disease, and the group agreed about classifying, I would say, the initial presentation into the one with unifocal disease, the one with the local regional metastasis, and when the metastases are located to a single compartment or viscerum, and the case with a systemic metastasis. This was very important, of course, to go on in the discussion on how to approach the different settings. Then we had, and we are still having plenty of discussion, especially among the pathologists, on when a molecular confirmation of the disease is needed, when it is not. We discuss a lot about the role of active surveillance, both in localized and in advanced disease, and of course on the role of liver surgery and transplantation, that I know will be addressed also today. Future plans, of course, to submit the final manuscript. Then I would be delighted if, in collaboration with the EHE Foundation, the main manuscript could be translated into a live version for patient available in different languages. This was done already with other sarcoma types like chordoma, and was really very much instrumental in educating not only patients but also many of the treating physicians. Then we would like to continue work together to develop a consensus approach to EHE, which means that there are, of course, for the future, the possibility of addressing a specific topic which were not discussed in depth in the main paper. Other proposals were raised during discussion. The first one is the collection of cases with the TFE3 translocation. This initiative has already started. There is already an exchange of email across institutions, while the second initiative that I really would like would love to see realized is the retrospective collection and the prospective collection of data about the treatment of hepatic EHE, including not only patients treated with transplantation, but also those treated with limited surgical resection and active surveillance. Surgeons looks to be very much engaged with that. Of course, we need some funding, but I hope that for the next meeting we will be able to announce that the project has started. Then we would like to work together, to continue working together with the other sarcoma networks to promote ultra-rare sarcomas like EHE. And in particular, I would personally like to organize a meeting with the regulators, of course, starting from EMA, but this would be great also with FDA, to implement the interaction among us, the clinician, the research and patients and the regulators is to me one of the most important points. In fact, the connection between pharma and researchers and pharma and regulators is very well established, while unfortunately there is still really too little interaction between the researchers and the regulators. This is a major limitation because it always happens that regulators are facing the discussion on a new drug with the pharmaceutical company without knowing anything about a disease. They often, in ultra-rare tumors, they often do not know anything about the epidemiology, the pathology, the natural history, and the activity of or inactivity of the available drug. And this is an experience that I and other clinical oncologists, of course, constantly have. So it's our, of course, task to try to improve this aspect. On the other side, we need to make them realize that a randomized study in diseases like EHE are almost unfeasible due to the rarity of the disease. And for that reason, we need to ask for a simplification of the requirements and the approval process in ultra-rare and orphan cancers like EHE. And finally, we need to share ideas on the appropriate study methodology and rules for label extension. To have a common agreement on the clinical approach to a disease as the one we would like to write down in the position paper is really a very important starting point to foster this kind of discussion, because even though only a few of us participate to the meeting with EMA or FDA, we can provide them with a document that has been signed by all the community, and is really, really very important. I'm going to the end, and I want to take this opportunity to announce you that thanks to the collaboration that we are having together with the EHE Foundation, that is sponsoring one of our projects with a group in London of Dr. Robin Jones, who has just spoken, and Memorial Sloan Kettering. We were lucky enough to develop a new PDX model of epitheliohemangiendothelioma carrying the WTR1 CAMT1 fusion. This is a tumor derived from a clinically very aggressive case, which was marked with pleural effusion and a very unfortunate prognosis. So I promise to the patient who offer us this her tissue that together we will work together to try to find a cure. And this is one of my commitment. I think is our common commitment, and I'm sure that we will do great in try to improve, especially these the treatment of these very, very unlucky clinical presentation. With that, I want to thank you again for inviting me, for what you are doing, and also for your patience in regard to my presentation, which was not successful at the beginning. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you as well. Even though that was broken into 2 segments, it was very effective. Thank you. So you have some unique perspectives that others have not talked about or will be talking about today. So I wanted to highlight a few of the things where you've got some unique perspective here. So one question, early on in your slides, you identified quite a broad geographic network of participants from 20 countries. I didn't see China listed in that group. Has there been active collaborations from China? And obviously with a large population, they would have quite a few cases.
No, I mean, of course, I think that we can succeed only if we are all together. We need to start from somewhere. So I think that the meeting we had is only the starting point. You saw that also Australia was not in, for example, not because we are not in collaboration with our Australian colleagues. At the beginning, the meeting was thought to be a live meeting with all the limitation of costs related to traveling and moving people. Probably thinking to a virtual meeting from the very beginning would have helped us in being more ambitious. Even though I can say this now, after we had a successful meeting, because, the first time is difficult to understand if it is possible to run such a kind of discussion all together in a virtual way. So I think that was a good experiment, a good starting point. But for the future, of course, we would like to work also with Australian, South America, and other ASEAN colleagues who are already on board in other projects on sarcomas.
Oh, great to hear. And I've got a comment and then a related question. So the comment is great news about the PDX model. Congrats. That's going to be useful.
Yeah.
And then the question related to that, have you successfully transplanted the PDX model into additional mice?
Yes, we are. I'm not, a basic scientist, so, but yes, we are now in the 3rd passage. So I think that we will be able to start experiments in a short period of time, even because unfortunately for my patient, this was really the very aggressive variant of the tumor. We didn't know when we transplanted the tumor, honestly. And we tried to do that already other times, and we were never successful because usually it's a low-grade, slow-growing disease. But this time, the disease was, very aggressive, and in fact, we developed the model.
Excellent. And another question related to that. Is it feasible to utilize fresh tissue to create PDX from other European countries?
Hope so. I mean, we have already a project in collaboration with Dr. Jones. I mean, there is always a problem of funding on one side because, of course, to try many times means to invest a lot of money, maybe to get, a successful model after several attempts. But yes, I think that this can be done, and it is already, this kind of collaboration is already in place, and I'm very happy with that because the sarcoma community usually is a very collaborative one. I like it very much.
And you mentioned during the talk there was a plan to submit the paper by June of this year. I know it's not possible to answer this question precisely because it's not under your control, but do you have an estimate of when it might be published? Because it's clearly going to be much anticipated by the community.
I hope to submit it before than June, honestly. But of course, we are in the COVID period, and so, we need to be a little bit, to see. But I hope that For the end of the year, of course, possibly before. It depends, because it's not always easy for such a kind of paper to be understood and accepted by major journal. But for us, it's important to have such a kind of paper there if we want to use it for the discussion with regulators, because they value a lot this kind of documents if they are well published. Otherwise, they do not.
Right. I've got a couple more questions that have come in. Another one on the PDX model. First, a comment saying wonderful news about it. And then the question is, any success growing the line in vitro?
Yeah, they are trying, yes.
And let's see, ideally, how frequently would an international consensus meeting be held to continuously update the care guidelines?
I mean, it depends from the news we have. Usually, I mean, in my experience, there are usually specific topic. After a meeting like this one, in which, of course, you cannot discuss everything, they still remain open aspect. And usually, the second, meeting is helpful to address specific points. So, for example, the next one could be more dedicated to discuss to the more aggressive variant of the disease, which probably is the one impacting the most the life of our patient. But maybe, you can have, a paper discussing how to treat the relapse after the surgical resection. So I don't think that we need another paper, a general paper in less than 5 years from now, unless we discover very new, very active drug, which of course is something I hope, but I'm not sure that is going to happen. But it is possible to meet again together to discuss specific aspects which were not completely addressed.
One of the interesting topics you raised, which I had not heard about before, was some of the regulatory barriers, and especially dealing with multiple international regulatory regimes. Can you speak to what the situation looks like in Europe in particular? Is there any EU general procedures that help normalize issues, or are you dealing with complexities with country by country national healthcare systems?
Unfortunately not. We are really working very hard. Unfortunately, UK is not on board anymore. And this is, to me, really a major problem because, you can understand it, of course. EMA is particularly tough, but we are trying to agree with them about having regular meeting in which we discuss about a given disease in advance of any specific drug, so that when the drug and the company do arrive, at least the regulators are aware of the disease. On one side. On the other side, in Europe, there is a big effort in improving a network, among which Huracan and the ERN, which are network of rare diseases recognized by the EU to improve the collection of data, the application for grant, patient referral, so many different aspects. And I hope that this will also be instrumental for the discussion with the regulators. But there is really, a long way.
Yeah. You also raised the issue with payers. Have you seen any payer-specific issues with EHE care?
Yes and no. I mean, the major difference between US and Europe is that the reimbursement in Europe is not received by insurance company, but it is given by the national health systems, which means that the access to off-label drug, which is very common in the US, once you have a publication showing the activity of a drug, it is, I cannot say easy, but it is often possible to ask for that treatment. This does not happen in Europe, and there are huge differences across countries. So you may have places like Germany, in which all the off-label are eventually, allowed to patients, or like Italy or Spain or France, where this is not the case. And so, for example, for us, there is no access to off-label drug. Sirolimus is an exception because it's so cheap that can be used, but is really an exception.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We're out of time for the Q&A session. Pleasure hearing your talk, and looking forward to your future work. We'll turn back to Jenny.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Stacchiotti, for sharing with us the incredible conference that occurred in the faces of so many experts covering 20 countries. It's amazing to hear. But what's probably even more amazing is to hear about the paper being published. I'll be honest, that's so exciting to me. It's like waking up on Christmas morning. So we are definitely looking forward to reviewing the paper. And thank you again so much for giving us your time today, but also your dedication and involvement with EHE. We appreciate you very much.